You're listening to One Bright Star's Life After Loss, a podcast that's focused on the lifelong journey of life after loss, with your hosts Erica Fisher and Alicia Moore. One Bright Star's Life After Loss podcast is sponsored by the law firm of Burkholtz and Associates. And now, One Bright Star's Life After Loss podcast.
Hello and welcome to One Bright Star's Life After Loss podcast. I'm Erica Fisher, Executive Director with One Bright Star.
And Alicia Moore, President of One Bright Star.
So we have Lynn Waterbury with us again, and Lynn is probably a One Bright Star fave of ours. She was our message speaker at the One Bright Star Fall Memorial, and she did a beautiful job. Your message gave me goosebumps.
Thank you.
Yes.
It was beautiful, and it gave a lot of hope and really was uplifting, and that is what our audience needed to hear that day. So it was perfect.
Well, it was the hope message, and I had written it about 3 times, and finally the last time I decided I didn't like it, and I started over. So I said a prayer, and I said, okay, you need to talk through me, because I have a million ideas that a million directions I wanted to go in, and I knew that I wanted it to be uplifting, and it's a memorial service, but I didn't want it to be sad, because that's not my message as a death educator and as a doula in training. That's not my message. I want death to not be the end. And I think that's where a lot of our brains go. Death is the end, and death is final, and it's sad.
Right.
Physically, yes. Absolutely, it is. And I if I had a nickel for every time I picked up the phone and wanted to call my mom 18 years later, that's still the case. Now, instead of calling her on the phone, I just talk to her in my car or in the living room, wherever I happen to be. I just talk to her, and so that relationship has changed. And I just wanted the message to be one of hope, and that while families are feeling lost and in despair and that they're all alone, they're not. And the messages at the end that I gave were my hope for you today. And I listed off about 4 or 5 of them, and don't ask me because I don't have it in front of me. But I have this speech at home. So if anyone's wondering, I can send you
Absolutely.
the link, and we can post it on the website if you want to see the speech. But I got done, and I closed my notebook, and I literally just bawled, because it was everything that I wanted to say, but in a more beautiful tone. So sometimes I think this message was big, and it was huge, and I wanted it to be everything that everybody wanted it to be. And I wanted it to be a little bit of a surprise,
Yes.
that it wasn't super sad.
I think it was a little bit of everything for everyone, because I haven't lost a child, but I have compassion to people who have lost a child, and I have lost people that are close to me. And there are certain things that are happening in my life where I could relate to that, and it really touched me, and where I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Grief and loss is something that doesn't have to be just associated with death. And especially right now during COVID things continuing to happen, a majority of us feel grief and loss, but we have no idea that that's what it is, because that's not what people are saying it is. They're saying we're just mad because we have to wear a mask, or because we can't do something. Our favorite restaurant isn't open past 10 o'clock anymore. I mean, all of these boundaries, when we don't understand that why we're so upset is because we're experiencing grief and loss, and we don't have words for it all the time.
Right.
Wow, yeah. You're so right. Spot on.
That's really interesting. And people will talk about just what you said, that it's not always about death. Death obviously is so much deeper and more difficult to navigate through. But people will talk like if you get divorced and that stuff, you go through this loss. You lost the relationship, you mourn that. And there's so many other things. I hadn't even thought about it that way,
Yeah.
that when you lose a job or other things, that you actually, instead of being, sad, upset, angry, mad, you're actually going through that grieving process.
Yep. And a lot of times when we lose a pet, people,
Yes.
they'll put the sad emoji on Facebook and they forget to check in, or they just don't check in. My pets are like my children. I mean, that really is truly a loss. And I think as a society, we just have to do better at checking in with our friends and checking in with people.
Yep.
As simple as setting a reminder in your phone, and it sounds ridiculous, but hey, check in with Dawn tomorrow at 6:30 while I'm thinking about her, because tomorrow night at 6:30 I'm going to totally forget.
Right. Actually, Eric is very good about that. As our executive director, she is wonderful, and I know that she checks in with people who call, who reach out to her. She remembers birthdays. It may not happen all the time, but there's certain people that will.
That
she'll
just
share
have that extra need.
Yes, you'll share that with me, and then you'll say,
Yeah.
"Oh, I did reach out to Susie the other day," and it's just like, "Oh, you're amazing. Thank you. That's what we need to do. That's what matters." And you talk about that they're not alone. That's always our message, is that they are not alone, and that you talked about that in your message, in your presentation, and
Grief feels lonely.
It does.
It isolates you and makes
Right.
you feel like you are all alone. And that was all of last
It makes
year.
you feel all sorts of different things. It makes you feel like you're losing your mind, that you're,
anxious.
Anxious, yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, you have nervous energy. I mean, it's not that you necessarily feel like you want to go out and be around people, which is where part of the depression piece comes in. But then, when you get around people, now during COVID, when I see groups of people together, I went into the grocery store the other day and I went, I cannot, which is weird. I love people. I love being around people all the time. But that mind shift happened last year.
I
That's
love people
interesting.
too. I'm a very, very people person. But if you ask me right now, do you want to go to a party or do you want to sit on the couch? I definitely want to sit on the couch.
Couch all the way.
I mean, just because that's what I grew accustomed to. Yes, I wanted to go do things and, I craved that, like, people, interaction. But at the same time, I was like, it makes me anxious to think about going out. Mm-hmm. So put yourself in somebody's shoes who has had a loss like that. They're probably feeling that tenfold.
Oh, it's exactly the same
Yeah.
thing. I met with a mom who lost her son to suicide, and she still, a couple of years later, is wrestling with the being in public piece.
Yes, that's so difficult, and I feel for those parents that have to go through that.
But it's a legit chemical shift in your brain. I mean, grief and loss chemically changes how your brain processes things. And sometimes it goes back quicker, and sometimes it never goes back to where it was before.
And sometimes it creeps creeps up on you when you least expect it.
Yep. Oh, yeah. You'll be having a great day and so excited that you're having a great day. And then you get in your car and that song comes on the radio and you're
Yeah.
Right.
back 3
You're
steps.
right back
You're
there.
having a
Yes.
great day and all of a sudden you're like, you're having a bipolar moment.
Yep.
You're ups and downs. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yep. Nope. And my passion is to change how people look at it, how people talk to each other, and how it's okay to go up to someone at the grocery store, and how it's going to be okay to be awkward.
Right.
Yeah. Let's be awkward together.
I am all about the awkward, really.
You just have to get it. You have to get that, to take that first step. And it will be awkward. It may be very awkward, but it will make such a big difference. Because,
Well, and I think part of the awkwardness is it's uncomfortable.
yes.
We don't like to talk about loss. We don't like to talk about grief. We don't like to talk about being sad. You like to ask someone, hey, how are you today? Without thinking. Your automatic brain goes, I'm fine. How are you?
Right. I think I maybe have shared, I don't know if I shared it with you, but may have shared it with you, Erica, that I remember when I had worked with a mom years ago and she lost her daughter in a car accident. And she told me the hardest thing for her is that people call and say, "Hi, how are you today?" And she said, "I wanted to say, how do you think I am? I just lost my daughter 2 weeks ago. How do you think I am?" So I try to be very careful if I am dealing or talking or interacting with someone to instead say, you know, "How are you? You know, how's it going?" Just to say, "Is your day going okay today?"
Yep.
Just to kind of reword that, to put it in a different context so that they feel that they can actually respond to it and that it's just more sensitive to their situation, because their life has just been turned upside down and it will never be the same.
That's a good way to word it. I often say sending you thoughts today or thinking of you, you know, and then I just leave it at that. And if they want to, you know, and divulge more or, you know, like tell me more, then they can. But then I'm not pushing them, you know, but I'm leaving it open, you know.
But like you said, we want to this message of hope and that you're not alone. And it's awkward. And when people, I think it's a great idea if we did post your message, because people can see that and say, I'm not crazy and I'm not, you know, it's awkward, but this is normal.
Yeah.
And everyone goes through a different sort of awkwardness and loneliness, but it's all part of the process. In that when you talk about that chemical shift, that people know that you can't control some of these things. You know, you need to talk through it, work through it, but you're not losing your mind. You've already lost so much that it's not your mind that you're losing, but there's just so much that that needs to be acknowledged.
Yep. Well, and I know how my grandma was raised and how they processed things during the Depression is not even remotely close to how we handle things now. And we think of what's acceptable now that was not acceptable then. I was telling this story the other day about my grandma went to ag school.
Okay.
And she decided that she was going to take a course in modeling, and she was also going to take a course in being a secretary, because as a woman, that's what you did in the 40s, I believe. So that's what she did. And you had to look a certain way, and you had to act a certain way and behave a certain way.
Oof.
Yeah. So when I was in my adolescence, and still now, it's obvious I like to eat things. And I'm not built to be a model. I enjoy going home and having a handful of peanuts and candy corn. It's a delightful mixture. If you haven't tried it,
we have it at our house.
Yep.
Love it.
Throw in some M&Ms, and it's quite delightful.
Yes.
Peanut butter M&Ms, actually.
Yeah, any of them really. So that's what's happening. And there were verbal comments all the time. You know, I don't think you need to have that. I don't think you should really get up and go for a walk. And, you know, just little nuances
from grandma?
Like that. Oh, from grandma. Yeah.
Grandma.
Okay.
Yes.
But back in the 70s and 80s, that was completely 100% acceptable. And now I think of how, you know, things that I say around, I've got 3 daughters and I'm the mom, so I'm the role model. So then you have to watch how you self-talk, because then you're teaching your kids how to talk to themselves.
Even boys, too.
Yes.
Because they're very, like, self-image is very big for them. You know, like, looking good and doing well in sports and not being, you know, like, it's boys, too.
Social media is insane.
It is.
And it can be used as a wonderful platform, and depending on which side of the TikTok you're on, and what shows up for you, because every person is different, it can be very detrimental. I know that I've heard conversations between my girls about different things that they see and different things, you know, that they learn. While I'm glad my 17-year-old has learned how to clean the bathroom from TikTok, I am sure there are other things that are not as delightful that she has seen, and she will never tell me.
Right.
But I also know that she has anxiety and depression, and that's a very real thing. And, you know, so I think being mindful of the awkwardness, being okay with the awkwardness, is all something that those are skills that everyone can learn.
Yes.
And having those difficult, awkward conversations are what we need to do in order to not make ourselves feel better, but to make other people know that
They're not alone.
They're not alone. This is a big, big world, and there are lots of people that are available to help you, and they would drop everything to come over and sit with you on the couch.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And as you said, it may not make us feel, not to make us feel better, but to help someone. But then we also can draw on that for ourselves if we have not, or when we do go through a loss. And no, those are skills. Just talking about it, anything we can do to get that message out there and to get people comfortable with it, and knowing that it's okay. It's okay to have these feelings, and it's okay to talk about it because there is help, and you can work through them. Life will never be the same,
Right.
but we need to continue living. So
That's a really good way to say it, Alicia. I like that.
I don't think any one of our loved ones who have passed would ever want us to be stuck or in a place that's not joyful, because I don't believe that that's where their souls are. I don't, and I would like to think in my happy little bubble world that, when my mom looks down and makes sure that I'm okay, that she is definitely more happy for me in the happy moments than in the moments that I am sad. But at the same time, I know that in the moments that I am sad, she is right next to me walking me through it still.
that's great. Yes. And that's what I want to experience. That's what I want to feel.
Gosh, my eyes got sweaty with that.
Yes. No. And I remember that's what you had talked about. You touched on that in your message. Yes. About the signs, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
The feathers.
The feathers.
Yes.
I can tell you, after our last podcast with Lynn, feathers have been haunting me. Like, they're everywhere. Like, if I took a picture of every feather and sent it to Lynn, she'd be like, "Oh my gosh, we have like an album."
Right.
But I mean, like, for a while, it was like 3 times a day. I was like, "Lynn, I'm not even joking. Another feather." And I was like, "I don't have anything feather in my house."
But they're beautiful feathers. For real.
Yeah, you're like, of course you would have beautiful feathers.
Well, yeah, I would expect nothing less.
That's right.
But I mean, some of them, and sometimes they might be from the same person, and sometimes they're different angel feathers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I look at it. When there is not a reason for a feather to be anywhere, I am obviously not wearing a down coat. I don't have a down pillow. I don't have a bird. I don't know why a feather would be on my couch.
Right.
And and that it's a message. It's feather wings, and they're just letting me know, hey, checked in on you today.
Yeah. We're here, and it brings you peace, comfort, joy. That's what we want. That's what you want.
Yeah.
When you are living, and you want to know that they're still with you, and that's the sign, and that's wonderful.
I pray every day that the parents, I go up to the memorial and I just look and I kind of clean up a little bit, but I look at all of those children and I pray that every family member that has a child up there has found some sort of peace, because in the end, that's what it is. They need to find peace to carry on and carry on their legacy and carry on their journey and, carry on their memories, all of that. And I pray every day that that people find peace in whatever it is. And I think like Alicia said, your message definitely gives so much hope. And I'm speechless. That doesn't happen all the time, but
I know we don't have a lot of time, but just your death doula. You said you're in training.
Yeah, I am in training to be a death doula. What a death doula does, it's just like a birth doula, but we, instead of ushering in, we're helping to usher out.
Okay.
A death doula helps the family and the person, whether they're in hospice or whether they have a terminal illness. They're 45 years old and just want to get their affairs in order. And that's part of the planning process. What do you want the end to look like? Sometimes it's signing medical documents and making sure that you have a DNR on file. Sometimes it's, pre-planning your funeral. What do you want that to look like? Do you want to take care of it, legally, financially beforehand? Or do you want, do you trust someone enough to make sure that this is going to be done for you afterwards? It's also What kind of music do you want playing? My grandma loved classical religious music, so that's what was playing for her. She had a stroke and was in the hospital for a few days. That's what the end looked like for her. Do you want someone to come in? My mom was obsessed with Pepsi and smoking menthol cigarettes. That was her thing. So at the end, they have swabs, and because you don't produce saliva.
Okay.
So they'll swab, the inside of your mouth with liquid just so it's not so dry and whatever else. And we actually put Pepsi on the swab, and the nurse just rolled her eyes, and she goes, "This is just crazy." And I'm like, "It's only crazy to you because you are not her." And that's,
right.
But and then that's what we did.
Yeah.
And that's something, that is super simple, but it can definitely be talked about.
Right.
It's something that is not funny to a lot of people, but it's funny to me because that's who she was. Things that, do you want to be embalmed? Do you want to be cremated? It's super uncomfortable questions sometimes that you need to talk about.
So, question, do death educator or death doulas, like birthing doulas, are you there with them at the very end?
We certainly can be.
Because, which is amazing. I worked in a nursing home, and I grew very close with a resident, and I was there when she took her last breath, and I was swabbing, and, making sure she was comfortable, rubbing lotion on her hands. And I was there when she took her last breath, and her family was very thankful that I was there. Because I made her comfortable. She recognized me, and because she was still alertish, but
they still hear. They still know what's going on.
Like squeezing hand, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, I still remember that. I still remember what she was wearing. What jammies she had on, everything. Like I remember what room she was in the nursing home.
Transitions don't have to be awful.
Right.
They certainly sometimes are. Not every death is they just take a breath and then they don't. Not every death is like that by any stretch of the imagination, and sometimes it can be very painful and ugly at the end. It just depends on the situation. Right. But that's part of what the doulas do. They meet with the family, they meet with a person. Typically, towards the end, doulas will work in teams just to take shifts. There's also a group, No One Dies Alone, and just to make sure that no one does die alone.
Right.
If you know it's the end, with my grandma, she had a stroke. There was always someone in there with her.
Right.
I will never forget the sweet young. She couldn't have been more than 17 years old, and she was lotion, doing the massaging of the hands, and it was so beautiful because grandma was so tense, and you could just watch her relax when she came in and did that. And that was something that was beautiful that I don't think she understands, the gravity of what she was doing. But we certainly did. And that was wonderful.
Yes. It's comforting to the family. Like you said, Erica, they were so appreciative to have you there. So,
but I think too, just having someone come in and have those awkward conversations, start the conversations.
Yes.
What's the plan? What does this look like for you? Sometimes it's super uncomfortable. What are we going to do with the house? If grandma's at home or if mom is at home, what are we going to do with the house? What are we going to do with the things inside the house? I was talking to someone just this morning who was saying that if she knew she had a terminal illness, she wanted her wake before she was dead.
That's great.
We had a benefit for my mom, a fundraiser for her medical expenses. And my mom said it was a funeral while she was still alive.
Okay. Because
it was friends and family that she hadn't seen in years that came out to see her. And it was wonderful.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, because you get a chance to say all those wonderful things to your mom. They said that those things that normally you say at the funeral to the loved ones, which does help them, because they feel really good to hear about, how much their loved one meant to other people. Yep. But for you to actually hear that for your mom, that was great.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's cool.
And it's simple
is.
things too. I have a Spotify playlist that my kids know. It's a party. It's not a funeral. It's
a celebration.
Yeah, it's definitely a celebration.
Right.
And they know my wishes. I don't have anything concrete, written in stone, but I'm very vocal about what it is that I like.
Right.
There's a card game that I have at home with conversation starters that you can actually play all together. And it's, gets you to think, what do you want in your obituary? Mm-hmm. Where do you want your obituary? Do you even want one? Do you?
Yeah.
Who do you want to be your pallbearers? We've had these conversations before. I've had them with my husband and that stuff. We'll talk about it sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. And those conversations need to be normalized. It doesn't matter if you're 35 or 85.
Exactly.
I remember the first time my parents had that conversation with me, we have our plot information. I was like, well, you guys are weirding me out.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. When they said, do you want one next to us? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I'm 11. Yeah. Okay, so I might have been like 38, but...
Right. My mom
yeah.
actually has a death file. That's kind of our joke. She calls it the dead file, I guess. Because whenever she goes to funerals and that stuff and visitations and she gets the pamphlets, she'll find, maybe the way it's laid out. She likes something. She likes a song or something. And she's like, oh, Alicia, this is a good one for the dead file.
Funny.
Yep.
And so we laugh about it. And I've saved a couple to give to her, too. Because I'm like,
absolutely.
Like this one.
Yes.
But that's perfect.
Right.
I mean, that is absolutely 100% because then everybody gets what they want. And when that happens, you're going to smile because you're going to remember that conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to always be so sad. It's a transition and it's an end. Yes, 100%.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you more during your death doula training. I'm really excited to hear more about it because, like your message, it gives hope. It gives hope to the client. Do you call it a client, patient, friend? Yeah.
To those
and
that really
the family.
need it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So you're doing wonderful things, Lynn, and I'm so honored and proud to know you. So
thank you. Well, it takes a team, and we're part of a team. So
absolutely,
we'll get through it together.
That sounds great.
All right. Well, that's it for today. And Lynn, we'll have you back. So
I'll be back.
Don't go too far. All right. Until next time, this is Life After Loss podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to One Bright Star's Life After Loss podcast. Life After Loss is a copyrighted production of One Bright Star. One Bright Star's Life After Loss podcast is sponsored by the law firm of Burkholtz and Associates. For more information on the lifelong journey after losing a loved one, please visit our website at onebrightstar.org.